we're going to talk to our next speaker, Steen Rasmussen. So, Steen Rasmussen, digital strategist.
Malcolm.
Yes. How are you, Steen?
So good to be with you guys.
It's
So I've been excited. I've been sitting here listening to all the other guys for the entire day. So I'm looking forward to sharing my 5 cents.
fantastic. Well, and I think you have an amazing case study to share, which I'm really excited for people to hear about. But let me introduce you formally. Steen Rasmussen, digital strategist and senior partner at IIH Nordic. Steen has worked with online media and web analytics for the last 16 years as a consultant, trainer, and speaker. His focus is on turning digital analytics data into actionable business processes. And Steen is a very popular speaker. He's done talks from Silicon Valley to New York, from London to Barcelona. He's also giving lectures on e-business at the University of Copenhagen and University of Southern Denmark. And the organization he works for is an absolutely fascinating case study of, working in a really interesting, fascinating way and how they use data to drive that transformation. So, Steen, if you're ready, I'd love to hand over to you.
Yeah, I am hopefully ready. So hang on for a sec.
Fantastic.
I should be ready. Yeah, I am ready.
You're ready.
Cool.
Thank you. Take it away.
Yes, I am. Yeah, thanks. So for me, this is kind of an interesting journey because normally I get to talk about a lot of stuff related to what I actually do. And that has always been my interest. I've been enjoying it. So suddenly flipping the bucket and being the case study on something that is basically not our core business, but just a transition we went through. It's fun and hopefully it's going to be entertaining for you guys as well. Because once upon a time, there was a company called IIH Nordic and they had a problem. They were doing fine in the market. They had been established in 2005 and things were kind of going good. But the key thing was that the key thing was that their staff was being headhunted by everybody, and they had the issue we had the issue that we had to compete with this. And we looked at the staff and we looked at the situation and said, how can we get people to stay longer and be happier? And actually, from the beginning of the company, when we started it, we wanted to create the best company in the world. So we looked at this situation where people being headhunted and say, how could we increase retention and company or employee happiness at the same time? And one of the things we were trying to sell at the time and talking about was digital transformation. And it was basically like everybody else in 2014 saying it was a nice subject, but nobody was really buying. So we said, well, what about if we start with ourselves? It's fine, everybody, start with the man in the mirror, because I think everybody's trying to sell digital transformation on an hourly rate basis, and that's really not the idea. So we looked in the organization and we kind of saw something that opened our eyes to saying that we were probably not being as efficient as we could, because we always have a lot of our female employees going on maternity leave. And what we find out, there's kind of a pattern when before they go on maternity leave, they work longer hours, they come in earlier, they leave later, and they get their job done over the day. But after maternity leave, there's another efficiency, and it goes for the men as well. But having this efficiency saying, you come in spot on time, you leave earlier than ever, but you still get the job done. So inspired by them, we actually said, okay, cool. So if there's an opportunity in the organization and with the digital technologies now being available to the market, there was a chance to actually go and do a transition. So over the next 3-4 years, we actually did what we call a culture experimentation. We tested, I think, 120 different things. Some were good for the organization, some weren't really good. But the ambition was actually after in 2019, we wanted to be able to go to a 4-day work week. So people were only going to be working 30 hours And actually, things worked out fine. We were actually able to already in February 2018 push that. So in 2018, we changed the entire culture so people were only working 4 days a week and 30 hours. And as the first larger organization, we were around 50 people. So having that process for 50 people and actually shifting it from working 5 days to only working 4 days was a major step. But all the processes that we have been looking at and all the tools we had tested and everything that was really good. And we were able in the first year to decrease the numbers of hours spent working from with 20,000 hours, right? So we worked 20,000 hours less, but we had a bigger turnover and a bigger profit. And that was kind of an amazing case for us to go out and say, this actually worked. There is a power in technology that will enable this to go to the next level. Other thing was that illness went down to 1.7%, never been lower. Stress actually went even further down. So even though we were working less and people were achieving the same thing in shorter time, they were actually being less stressed. And one last thing that we also got rid of just to be cool, because it wasn't necessary in the new work environment, was that we got rid of home offices. So people didn't need to work from home because working from the office was so nice and so convenient and so efficient that they could basically get the job done there. So for us, that resulted in being voted a great place to work in a small IT company in Denmark 3 years in a row, and actually best small place to work in 2019. So we really lived up to it, and I wish I could say, and we lived happily ever after. But like everything else, I think that the challenge in this situation was, of course, that we had to pivot. With COVID, we stood in a situation where everything we had structured around working from the office and being efficient from the office actually had to be rethought, but while we were working. We didn't really have any time to go and rethink the processes or do anything differently. Because from one day to the next, we actually just decided to work from home. But this pivotal thinking is actually one of the things that had actually helped us a lot. One of the things that we learned over the last 4 years was basically living in a constant state of change. So things were always an experiment. We were always trying new things. We were always working in new ways. So having this process and actually suddenly, once again, being forced into changing one thing, where do we work from? How do we work? How do we meet people? Was basically just another test. So I guess in one day we were up and running and basically working from home. And as a company, we didn't productivity wise, we didn't lose a step. Now, from our part, of course, a huge part of this is part of this perspective, because our work environment is basically using and activating data, doing online marketing, but basically going in and working smarter and not harder and enabling the customers to do the same. So we are Google Cloud partner, do a lot of fancy AI and machine learning stuff. We are a Google Marketing Platform partner, do a lot of marketing fancy stuff. But a lot of that stuff wasn't practical in the sense of the size of the company that we're with. But the key thing we had was an approach to data that was about delivering results. So we just went back to our data that we have been doing all the time, and then we started to look at things again. So, and some of the things we saw that I'm going to share with you today are these 7 key things that we have changed. Because from us going from a 30-hour work week, 4 days at the office, and changing that, we had to adjust some things. And this is some of our learnings in relations to what we had to go through. There's probably plenty of other stuff that could be mentioned, but in the amount of time I have, this is kind of the key things I want to pull out and share with you guys. So, first thing that we had to discuss when we went when we went and started working from home was really this concept of management and how we control people, right? Because there's kind of different situations, and we could go in and we could actually go in and say, we don't trust people to work from home, so we need to monitor them increasingly. And we actually looked at a tool saying, could we use this tool? And this is the tool at the bottom called Protoscore, which is an American tool that actually goes in and monitors the use of the tools. So it will track across your employees, emails, calendar, chat, docs, CRM, and communications, and actually give you an idea of how much of these tools are being used. Now, we decided to focus on the trust part, and we would rather trust our employees. So we didn't implement it because we had a long track record of actually being there and enabling them instead of sub-managing them. But from some levels of management perspective, when we've been talking to people, there has been this to some degree mistrust in the staff if they are able to work from home. And a tool like Protoscore is something that can actually help that. Protoscore also has one interesting thing in the sense that right now I think they are being used by more than 20,000 companies. So they actually on a regular basis share press releases on what has changed. So going to some of the stuff that if you want to see what has been the consequences of COVID, they really have some interesting data in relations to, of course, increase in video meetings, but also a decrease in calendar software, an increase in email, but also a significant increase in phone calls. So there's kind of a lot of levels in showing that this is not just about video meetings. We are working in completely different ways from a practical perspective. There's also another tool. If we were in the distrust business, we didn't look at it for a long time, but it will actually, part of the terms will be that when people are working from home, they have to have their webcam turned on, and every 3 minutes it will take a picture of them. And I really think that if this is the direction that you want to go in and really have that level of monitoring of people, then I think from our perspective, I think you need to re-examine your relationship to your employees, because that shows a level of distrust that basically means that either you hired the wrong people or you're not leading them like a leader, but you're sub-managing them. So our perspective here is saying we decided not to do that. We decided to enable people instead. So the approach we pushed instead was actually going in, and instead of going in and focusing on narrowly on the hours that people were delivering and what they were doing with the time, we shifted much more to an activity planning focus. So trying to look in relations to what activities people were doing, how they were doing, and basically letting them lead the ball in relations to do the job. But if they needed, then they could always come and have the sparring they would like. So we also worked a lot in relations to doing much better resource management. So people constantly updating how the next couple of days looked time-wise, if they had a lot of time, if they had a little time, so we could give them the type of assignments that would match the time they had available. Now at the bottom this is a part of our course tech stack in relations to working together. So we use Asana, we use Teams, we use Yammer, we use TimeLog for time registration. But the thing we found out during the test period is basically this is extremely individual from company to company. So this is our stack. This is not the stack I would recommend people to just take. This is something that you will have to experiment and find out. But the key thing for going back to that is basically the experiment is the key here. A lot of the stuff that you will be doing if you want to work smarter and try to adapt to a new reality is basically trying to go where no man has gone before. So and the only answer you will find there is saying the answer is experimentation. Because if you don't choose to experiment, then you're basically then you're not choosing the solution that is best for you. You're just choosing some solution. So one of the other things that we have changed as well is actually an increase in personal conversations and one-to-ones. So everybody gets a one-to-one conversation with the direct managers every week. We also focus a lot on personal growth and has increased the focus on goals, but goals expanding. So it's not just the person's individual, it's not just the corporate goals about turnover or productivity, but it's also incorporating the individuals in these goals. So we're working aligned in delivering some of this interesting stuff. Now, this is only possible because we have the data set we have. And for us, one of the things that has been a core element in reducing our time spent, and this has actually helped us a lot in the transition, has been this board. As you can see, it's powered by IIH Nordic. It's something we had to build ourselves because early in the process of going to a 4-day work week, we actually started investing a lot of time in working in Pomodoro sprints. We could see that people getting disturbed during the day was probably one of the places where we lost most traction when it came to productivity. Now, going to Pomodoro was fine, but the problem was that it actually decreased productivities for other people, because if you were just saying you were in a Pomodoro and we had like red lights you could put on your computer, people could just see you were busy. They couldn't see what you were busy doing. So we actually implemented this tool so you register your Pomodoros so other people can see what you're doing and when you're finished. So I could go in and I can use this board to see where my colleagues, what they're working on, and when I will be able to go and communicate with them. So I don't have to hover around them and potentially disturb them while they're working, because I know that they will be available at a given time. And that just increased the reliance on your ability to use tools in your work process. So another thing that we also have been doing, and this has actually goes all the way back to I think 2015. So these are not our numbers. It's just an example, but it's going in and saying, challenging this assumption that we need to do our employee survey once or twice a year about their happiness. So we tested some different tools back in the days. We started and were really satisfied with Office Vibe. It's a tool where you do employee satisfaction surveys actually once a week. So people will get a series of questions every week. It's simple questions. It will take them a couple of minutes to answer them. But what you get is you get a vibe of what is the mood in the office, and it will actually be broken down into these 10 different subcategories that you can see here. And actually, if you click on a subcategory, each subcategory is broken down into 3 more lower categories. And right now we've been using Office Vibe for the last 5 years, 4, 5, 6 years, and our score in relations to corporate satisfaction has never been higher. It actually increased during COVID because we use it as an active thing, that even though people are not together, we can actually still get an idea of how they feel and what they're doing. So this is a way to get them to tell what they feel. And it's anonymous, so it's not really forcing them in any way. This is a chance to be honest about what is going on. So we can see what is going on, and it's really positive. Right now, we're also looking into potentially testing the happiness index out of London. A really interesting tool, goes much more into a dialogue level, and it enables people to more proactively go in and comment. So this is kind of the next step in this. But just having this instant feedback from the employees in relations to what is the core of what's going on. Because that has kind of been the key thing that we see as the challenge now, is the detachment, that people are not sitting in the same place. So like Malcolm just said, you kind of lose the social aspect. And the social aspect is one of the things that will basically make sure that you have a company and you have a culture. Because if everybody is just working remote and not really helping, not really having anything else than a professional interaction with the colleagues, then there is a challenge. And for us, what we've done, and this is actually something we started earlier, because we wanted to break down the silos in the company. So we actually started something we call Lucky Lunch. So Lucky Lunch is basically every week there will be a lottery where people will be signed up against a random person in the organization, and then they will have lunch together. Of course, this respects introverts. You're not forced into it, but as a voluntary thing, it actually gives you an occasion to catch up with somebody you don't know. So the next step that we're using is this is actually going to be activated in relation to online as well. So even though you're working remote, you can still have lunch together. You can still do an online session where you talk. And the second part is the social club. So since the beginning of the company, we have tried to do a lot for the employees. And we actually had something called Steak and a Movie since, I think, 2006, that once a month in the evening, we actually flipped things and people were on a voluntary basis welcome to work late. Then we would go out and eat, and then we would go see a movie. Nothing fancy, but just a way to giving people a room to be together more. And I think for us going forward, this is actually something that we really see as a central part of being a company. We have to a large degree enabled people to work remotely. So people are now, it's voluntary, even though in Denmark you're allowed to come back to the office. Now, we've still said to people they are completely free to choose when they want to come back. But what we see now is actually that we have that we will be focusing on saying there might be some specific days that people will be here so we can enable meetings. There will be some specific days where they have to come to social events so they know they are colleagues and they're part of the colleagues. And then we're doing learning and innovation Fridays where people actually come in and do non-client related training and socializing and development. So the personal development part being put on as something mandatory. So this is kind of the shift. Everything is in flux right now. So this is it's still up in the air, but it's something that we expect to be working on. So the big last thing that we are challenged with right now is basically location planning. We have people who have been in other places as well, but the major part of the staff is based out of Copenhagen, and we have a good, wonderful office here. But the key thing is saying going forward, things will not be the same as it was pre-COVID. We will actually enable people to work more from home, giving them a larger degree of freedom, but still giving them the opportunity to schedule their own day. So the key thing now is actually going in and enabling location planning, which is the challenge that we're facing now. How do you plan meetings if somebody wants to meet physically? If somebody's working from home, what can you do in relation to that? How many rules should there be? So this is the fun for management that we're working on right now. And for my part, that was the 7 things I took out. We have made an awesome book in relations to how we transform to the 4-day week. You can find that online. Or if you want to look into that part of the business, this has simply been saying, if you're already working efficiently, how can you pivot so you match a work from home COVID situation? And I think from what we've learned is being able and being willing to accept change as something we just have to adapt to has really helped us a lot in pushing forward. So it has helped us in understanding that people are basically constantly changing, and to match the world that we're living in, we have to follow that. So for us, this is just the 7 considerations that I think is really worth thinking about, especially all of them basically, but the 3 first ones saying, do we trust or do we micromanage? Because that will decide your road forward. Do we focus on time or do we focus on assignment? Right? And then the last one, do we focus on developing the employees or do we focus on just having them as employees? There's this very old tired meme on LinkedIn where that goes around saying the what is this? What if we train our people and they leave us? And then the reply is saying, what if we don't and they stay? right? So having this, are we focused on development? Are we seeing people as a resource, or are we just seeing them as something that we need to tap into and exploit? For us, we see them as a resource that has to be developed. It's a long-term game, having the right employees. So that focus is there from us, but in some companies, it might not make sense. Going forward, there's like ensure that there is a sense of team. That is probably the key thing from a culture perspective that we're focusing on. Make sure you enable direct social contact between the staff. Otherwise, they will get detached. Make sure you know how people are feeling, because the feeling is actually part of the glue that will enable you to adjust. And then enforce the flexible work style. That is kind of the core fundamentals from our side. For us, we have been doing this based on data. We've had so much data, and the book actually contains a really huge part of the data that is behind our decisions and all results of all our experiments. But we will continue doing this and actually trying to enable people to do it more. But this is basically, from our part, the answer to a lot of this. We can do a lot of change, but if we don't measure it, if we don't understand what's happening and all the consequences from productivity to employee satisfaction, then we're really at risk. But if we gather the data and we use the data in the right way, then we will be able to really take things to the next level. And with that, I'm kind of finished singing my song, and I hope you were entertained. If you have any questions or anything, something I'm not going to reply to, I don't have time to reply to now with Malcolm, or in the chat afterwards, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I promise I will try to be gentle and honest. Cool.
Steen, thank you so much for your presentation, and I just love this case study. I think it's so forward thinking. I think it's a beautiful little micro revolution that you've staged in the world of work. I want to just jump in. We've got some questions coming in, and I'll go to the audience questions quite quickly, but I just want to jump in and drill down on one thing, which is team sense. So I haven't heard this expression used very much, but I really like it. So one of the things that's happened as people have, been locked down, working from home, is a feeling of, losing that team sense, they're not being connected. Can you just dig into that a little bit, and more on the psychology side than the practical one? What do you think is really critical there?
So I think that the really critical part here is saying that the one thing that people that differentiate a workplace, right, is the culture we are a part of. And if we're too remote and we're too focused on efficient, and there's no room for the team and no room for the person as part of something bigger, then everything is just going to be about my paycheck, right? Yep. Then I'm just selling my time to deliver something.
Yep.
Whereas if I get the culture or the team sense that I'm part of something, then we will actually take it to the next level. Because then we'll go in and really share. And it was kind of this thing for us. There was always somebody who was willing to offer our employees more. And we had cases, and then this is kind of where we pat ourselves on the back. There was a case where one employee actually came and said that he had almost gotten an offer of a double up on on his salary, but decided to stay.
Wow!
Because of the culture. And I think it's bragging rights. I can say this unconsented here. You can call me a liar if you want to, but it's the culture takes it far. Yeah. And I think that sense of accomplishing something together with somebody else, and not just doing a job, that is what makes the difference in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, and
that is team sense.
And that really taps into the Maslow's hierarchy and everything of wanting to contribute. Contribution is a huge part of why we go to work. We don't go to work just to earn money. We go to work because it's part of our identity, because it's a place where we get to contribute. And so I think that you've really touched on something really important. I'm going to jump to the audience questions. The first one is from Amy. Hi, Stan. How long did you spend in the test phase, if using Agile, before implementing the change?
So we actually started testing a lot of different things. I think we were probably spent a year and a half simply testing different tools. And then we actually went in and we did a transition period where we actually had something where we called it back to basics. So so we started off reducing the numbers of Fridays we were working. So in the beginning, so we actually transitioned to a phase where we were working 4 days a week and we were using Friday to optimize the organization.
Great.
Right? And then we started reducing that and giving people a Friday off. So they were only working 3 Fridays to improve the organization, and they could see down the line how these Fridays would stack up. So they would be enabled to do it. But I think it depends immensely on the organization that you have. For us, it was ungrateful in the sense that nobody had done it, so we were really going through the jungle on our own.
Yep.
And we were in some horrible situations sometimes where we almost died because we chose the wrong system that killed our liquid assets with us out knowing it. So that was kind of a scary situation. But we got wiser, and hopefully we're a much more robust organization today.
Yeah, and it's very kind of you to write a book about how you did it so people don't have to fall into those same traps. We have a message, or a question rather, from Gerolf, which is, Steen, very interesting case. Can you elaborate on how you balance monitoring people against transparency, talking about distrust and trust? Did you get negative feedback, or did you apply common sense in not taking certain routes?
So we actually applied common sense. And so back in the days to optimize the organization, and because we're a consultancy, we have done a lot of testing on time management, just to be able to make sure that we're not selling projects too cheap or too expensive, but actually are able to adjust what we sell. And I think from that process, we found you can only micromanage people to a certain degree, that if we push them too hard, then the pushback becomes really negative and the quality of data actually drops because people will start putting in crap data just to get it over with. So having this understanding of saying, okay, you will tell us to some degree what you're doing, but if we force you too much, then you would rather leave than you would then you would be micromanaged that way. So for us, we kind of knew the threshold. And an interesting thing actually was that when we shifted from the 5-day work week to the 4-day work week, we actually lost some senior employees, which we hadn't seen coming, basically because they weren't ready to work in a new way. You have the saying about, and not mentioning any names, but you can't teach old dogs new tricks. And for a lot of them, they were standing in a situation. So either they were, because everybody went to 4 days, but still got the same 5-day salary, right?
Yep.
So either you have to change your way of working, or they could change to somewhere else and keep working 5 days and actually get a salary increase. And because they were being headhunted.
Right.
So that was really an interesting case in the sense that we had absolutely not seen that coming as something we had to take into consideration.
Can I jump in and ask you a question there? Because, being, in the psychology side of the equation, do you think that, when you just get a distributed team like this, that some leaders will leave because they're not going to have the same significance and status, perhaps, that they might have had in an office situation where everyone's together all the time?
Well, yes, in the sense that if you're a managing leader that wants to micromanage and control your people and monitor them very closely, then not having them very close is probably going to be a threat to your self-perception.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you lead instead of manage, then I would say then it's not going to be a challenge, because then that's the perfect scenario for you.
Yeah.
Because you can inspire people to be all they can be.
I couldn't agree more. We have a question from David, which is, what percentage of people do you feel will want to work from home in 2021? If you have a crystal ball.
Yeah. So I think it's an amazing question, because right now we're standing in the situation where we have the extreme numbers. And I think, I like Microsoft saying there was a rush to Motem, what we've been doing is we actually been looking a lot to Asia in relations to seeing what some of the patterns has been there. And for instance, in South Korea during the SARS epidemic, the number of people who went and bought their groceries online increased from 3% to 50.
Wow.
But but after the epidemic was over, it dropped back down to 15. So it was still a radical increase compared to before. So I think that what we'll see is like a seesaw thing, that things will even out a bit.
Yeah.
So less people will want to work from home that we think, but a lot more than what we're used to now.
Okay.
And this is kind of for us saying right now, like Henrik said, the pendulum is really far to one side now.
Yeah.
And it will swing back, and it will find some place that is not the old center, but it will make a new center, but not where we are today.
Definitely. I couldn't agree more. And I have one more question before we go to our panel discussion format, which you're, of course, going to join us for.
Yeah, sure.
Is that, you more or less said it in your statement there, but do you think a 4-day working week is a reality for all organizations? Or what would be what would be some of the limiting factors? I guess could also be a way to ask it.
So what we see very often is people look at very practical work like masons and people working in hospitals and saying they can't work 4 days. But there is, and this is where the technology part is coming in, right? We look at kind of 4 key dimensions, saying there's technology, there's people, and there's processes, and then at the center for us, there's data. And what we see, there's a lot of technology coming into sectors that we are not seeing as technology driven. So now you can have robots laying bricks, you can 3D print houses. So I think what we'll see is that this will be a capability for everybody down the line. In some sectors, it will make a big difference. I think for me, the scary part was saying, what is the biggest profession in the US?
What is it?
Truck drivers.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and with self-driving cars, there's a major change coming there. And I think what we need to understand is that everything is being changed now. This COVID situation just forced us to the front of the bus.
Yep.
But the rest of the world is going to catch up, and the challenges out there with new technology and new opportunities. And we do a lot of machine learning and AI as well. But for clients, that is also empowering a lot of sectors that we didn't see before. Yep. So for instance, we have a customer that uses AI to qualify leads for their call center. So instead of their call center calling out cold canvas, they actually get qualified leads based on a machine learning algorithm. So they actually have to do less work to deliver the same amount of clients.
Yeah.
So everything is basically in flux, but it's a real fascinating question. You could basically do a conference on that question alone.
You could, and we probably will. But I do have one very last question before we go to the panel discussion, which is, what do you do with all the extra time? What do you do with the extra day every week?
So we learn. So basically, it's for the individual to do what they feel will strengthen them the most. And so this is a part of a process that has been long for us. A long time ago, we actually implemented a company perk saying that. So one of the main barriers for your restitution and you meeting up for work fresh the next day was your cleaning. So we actually hired a cleaning lady at the company that when people were at work would go home to them and clean their houses, so they didn't have to bother about that, because that was an investment in when they were at work. So a lot of the ideas and a lot of stuff that we had focused on is basically enable people to be all what they can or all what they want to. So we have people doing carpentry because that enables them and fulfills them. Right. We have people that take certifications and read. We have some people and then that have actually flexed and saying, well, I would rather spend my 5th day doing something work related, because then I can actually leave earlier the other days. So I will have more time with my family the other days.
Fantastic.
So giving that flexibility and saying, this is the fifth day. I use it for learning and doing things that I feel develop myself.
Fantastic.
And sharing. I'm a big community person, but for all the other people, it's what they feel like.
Steen, I really appreciate your presentation. I appreciate all your answers. Please stand by. We're going to bring you into the panel discussion in just a minute. I now need to introduce our panelist, who is Susanne Erkenmark, who's the Business Area Manager with Sigma Worklife. And since October 2019, she's been the manager of Sigma Worklife, where she leads a team that delivers digital work-life solutions on Office 365 from both the technology and people perspective. She's an experienced leader with a passion for driving change and helping customers realize their potential within that modern work-life context. And she was formerly working with Microsoft on the New World of Work project, that Nya Arbetslivet project, fantastic, which included all the employees from Microsoft Sweden. I'd love you to chat with us a little bit about that project. I really was excited about that project, that the results they got from that. But Susanne, please welcome. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Contributing to this panel. Steen, thank you for still being with us. It's great.
Of course.
And I would just like to kick off with a question for Susanne, which is, when we were getting prepared for this conversation, you talked about that people, place and technology need to be in harmony, and that's what creates a great working life. And I wonder if you could just elaborate on that a bit for us, the harmony between those three elements.
Yeah, sure, I would love to.
Fantastic.
And as we heard Henrik talk about before, he also mentioned the Nya Arbetslivet, the new way of working that Microsoft started working with 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And already then we were talking about people, place and technology. And lately with the COVID-19 stuff, we've been talking about the place and the technology only.
Yep.
And for me, you miss out the most important piece of it, because the most important piece in the center is the people. It's the person behind the technology and that has to drive the change that needs to happen. And as Steen mentions as well, if you don't have all these in common, and if the people do not want to be a part of the new way of working, it won't happen. And we can see Gartner, for example, they say that about 70 to 80% of all transformation projects fail. And why is that?
Yeah.
Well, normally it's because you miss out one of those, and you can invest so much money in technology.
Yeah.
But if you don't invest in people as well, it will fail.
Yeah. And Steen, I think you did a really good job of investing not only in technology and ideas, but investing in those other things. Do you have a comment on what Susanne said?
Yeah, but I think for us, one of the key things was actually having the people on board, right? Because if the people are not willing, then we won't see any change. So we've been out talking to organizations where we kind of seen the culture shift, that management has been really keen on doing radical stuff, and below that, so they're moving ahead with 200 kilometers an hour. Below that, you have a level of managers. They want to do stuff as well. They're moving ahead with 120. Yeah. And then you have like mid-management that's driving with 60, and everybody else in the organization is basically scared shitless and just sitting there with the handbrakes pulled and just not really doing anything, and you'll just kill the organization.
Yeah, it's really, really true. And Susanne, having those things in harmony, for you, from your perspective, the work you're doing with your clients, which piece of the puzzle do you see is most out of balance in getting them? Is it different with every organization?
That's different within organizations, I think. But I think the most common thing that has been today that we've seen through the COVID-19 stuff is that they were not even able to get information out to all their employees.
Yeah.
Or for me, it's not important to get information out. It's important to get information in, because that's where you can make a difference as well.
Yeah, you told me that one of the hottest challenges that your companies had was not that they could get information to people, but they understood the information. And that gap between receiving information and understanding information was actually a much bigger one and much bigger challenge. Well, have you got any example of that you can share, or Or is there
Well, I think everyone knows. I mean, we have the feeling, all of us, that the amount of information just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And we talk about big data, and we talk about artificial intelligence, and we just feel somehow personally that the information is an overflow.
Yeah.
We have a mailbox that's huge. We have so many ways of finding information today, but no real good way of getting to know which information is it that you should really absorb and that you should really have use for. So for me, it's important that the organization itself has a way to push information to the right people that should receive that information. And that includes, today we've been talking a lot about the desk workers that has a laptop that can work from home, as you say. And Steen mentioned as well that we had the workers in healthcare, for example, but also like in manufacturing. We have a lot of people out there working in the front line that does not have a computer, that cannot, it's hard to drive a bus from home.
Yes, of course, yeah.
But of course, the bus driver also need the same information, and the truck driver. And the culture question is equally important to get all the employees that you have on the same page. So that's not a new thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have to do with the COVID-19 epidemics right now. It's something that we need to work with to get everybody on board.
And what are the enablers of getting that right information to the right people at the right time?
Well, for me, first of all, you should, as an employee, be able to have a tool that gets you the right information. And as an organization, it's important to be able to push the important information out and get like a read-write receipt that people have acknowledged and understood it.
Yep.
So that's one very simple part of it.
Right.
But what's also important is that you can then choose. And I mean, you do that as a private person. You can choose what kind of news you're interested in if you go into the news pages, and you can say that I want these and these news and so on. But many companies do not even have that in their own information pages or intranets today, and it's key.
What do you think about that, Sten?
Yeah, so I was actually thinking, for us, I think it's completely true what Susanne is saying, but also limiting the amount of information to people. So really making sure that they understand this is critical information for them and this is not critical for them.
Yeah.
Right. So because if you just tell everybody everything, then they will just be getting updated on stuff that is secondary to what they need to achieve today.
Yeah.
Right. But they will be really wonderfully. It would be like an amazing T-shape, except that the top bar will be so long that it'll just be a small dent in the middle. Yeah. And the key thing is finding the balance between the information. So I will tell you what you need to know and not disturb you, but giving you access if you need to know something extra.
Yeah.
So I think from that perspective,
Susanne?
It's really interesting today because we pushed out Microsoft Teams to so many people. You heard Henrik mention that. And so now we can do video calls and video meetings, and that's fascinating. And that's great, but that's not everything.
Yeah.
You can do so many more things. And the crisis now have really empowered a lot of people to do a lot more with the tools than they had before, but they don't know how. So the governance around how to use them and not only just share too much information, as Sten is saying, is really key as well.
Yeah, and I think what you said, Stan, about, giving people less information is absolutely critical. We have trained ourselves through social media and our smartphones to be informationaholics. We are just digesting information all the time. And of course, that's an enormous cognitive load that we put on ourselves on a daily basis. And, even some of the collaboration platforms, I won't mention any names, but recently I was put on a collaboration platform for a project for the first time, and I got so many pieces of information that I didn't need to interact with. And it was completely exhausting and completely made me not want to use that platform again. So I think that there is a really big piece here around information sharing and the way we use technology to push that out. And I think there's really exciting opportunities there. And, Sten, you used data to make a lot of decisions about what your company did and how it changed. Did
Yeah.
you use data to work out what information is the important information? Did you have some feedback loop on that?
So that is the project we're working on now, in the sense that there's so much. So because even though we are this one company, then we still have to break it down into separate teams. So very often it's the agility of the team that is much more powerful than the overall thing. So for instance, we have there's one shared standard meeting for half an hour every week where we go online and people get updated for the stuff that everybody needs to know. And that is also recorded, so if you miss it, you
Yeah.
are expected to watch it anyway.
Yeah.
But everything else is kind of digested into the team and on the cross-functional team level. So if people are working together, that is the key thing. And then on some Fridays, we share the insights that we built since we talked last time. Right, so actually enabling that and putting that on top.
And that is such a simple idea, recording the meeting for the people who weren't there. Now, when we talk about technology enabling better communication, sometimes we think we need to go into hyperspace to make that happen. And yet some of these answers are just simple, practical things that are easily within our reach.
And that we've been doing for such a long time, honestly. I mean, a lot of these things we've been doing before. People needed information before, and you had company meetings before where you shared information that probably not everybody could be in that meeting physically before either. So it's just think outside the box and use. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence now. I mean, that's one of the tools or the ways we can really extract the information that's important for you.
Yeah.
Because you get the information that the AI think you need for this. And we can see good examples of that today.
Yeah.
If you want to, I don't know if it was Dan or if it was Henrik that mentioned that in Outlook, for example, in Office, you said as well that you get insights about how much mail you do or how many times you work during a meeting and so on through the insights or analysis tools. And we see that even more coming, that AI uses biometrics on how you're working. So you can get back to what we said in the earlier today was that you need to stop working. It's really hard when you're working from home. You start early, you don't have lunch, and you skip the coffee breaks. You don't move anything, and you work late. So how can we stop people from doing that? How can we make sure that they make the walk to go to work still and do all these things? How can we make sure that they take a break every hour and stand up at least? So we can use biometrical data from the computer as well with AI to give you suggestions on what to do now, because they know how you're sitting or whatever. So
I mean, one of the reflections that I have, and I've hosted many conferences on the evolution of the workplace and all these different things, Digital Workplace Summit, hosting all these events and hearing all these things. And one of the words I hear all the time is efficiency.
Yeah,
right.
I hate it.
and I think that sometimes when we sometimes when we get this, we hear efficiency, but we don't get to why we want to be efficient. And from a human perspective, the efficiencies that we can build in through the technological changes are going to give people an opportunity for greater quality of life. Sten, you said you spend 1 day a week learning and doing things that make you feel good. That is if people take away anything from your talk, I really hope they take that away. Because for me, that is actually the win. That is the why that is at the heart of all of this. Yeah.
That is also why we could why the people wanted to join the journey for the 4-day work week, right? They're kind of bribing them with an extra day to be themselves or be all they could be.
Yeah.
And so of course it was it wasn't easy. Of course, it was a tough job getting there. But I think also, and this is the challenge, because we attend a conference like this and we get the idea that I have to rush home and change everything because everything is broken. And maybe everything is, but if I try to change everything at the same time, I won't be able to do anything at all.
Yeah.
So the idea from our perspective and our learning in this is saying, this is gradual. This is something where you actually change over time, and you do processes, so you're not changing everything at once, because that will stress people so much.
Yeah.
And one fun learning we had, and this is just a good example, when we onboard new people. In the beginning, when we onboarded them, they actually got onboarded to a 4-day work week. And the problem was that people got incredibly stressed because they were not used to working 4 days.
Yep.
So we actually had to have an onboarding program saying you're starting on 5 days, and when you're ready, you will get the 5th day off.
Now that is really fascinating.
That's really
That is
fascinating.
really fascinating.
Yeah, but
so
because
tell me, I want to jump in. What was it that stressed them? Were they overworking on the 4 days? Were they like a hamster on a wheel?
So basically what we've done is saying by improving our way of working, we changed the productivity. So in 4 days, people deliver what they normally do in 5. And then we gave them the 5th day off.
Right.
But if you come in from another culture, so this is like you saying you're used to running 10 kilometers 5 days a week. And I come to you and say, hey, Malcolm, listen, you just run 12.5 kilometers for 4 days in the same time that you normally run 10. And then you can take the 5th day off.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Yeah, that 5th day would be in hospital, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Running too hard.
At least until you've trained it, right? So, and then you might be able to do it.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't notice. And then the 5th day would be a gift.
Look, it's such an amazing insight into humanity. What you just shared with us, I think, such an amazing that you can give people what they want, and it can really stress them out. And this whole talk about self-leadership and being a self-leader, and people having no hierarchy in the organization, and that is such a recipe for stress if you don't bring it in incrementally and bring in that harmony that you were talking about, that there are tools, there is the transparency, there is the communication, all of those things coming together. One of the things that you said, Susanne, that was really funny when we had a phone call is that you said, I've been working in IT since 1987 and I really haven't changed. The way we work really hasn't changed.
No, and it's really true. I mean, the organizations look more or less the same. They're kind of the same kind of hierarchies with management levels and so on, and reporting and monthly meetings with your manager, and they will check out what you did. And I really think if things are going to change, and we will be able, all of us, to do what Steen is doing, is we really need to change that. And I go back to the trust and harmony and passion.
Right.
Because I do think if you have passion for your work, if you like what you're doing, you really strive to doing the best way you can.
Yeah.
But you need to have passion not only for work, you need to have passion for life.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't talk so much about workplace anymore. I talk about work life.
Yeah.
Because it has to do with having a modern work life, and that we were not able to do that in 87 because you had to go to the office and you had to be there your certain hours.
Yeah,
and
you were waiting for a fax to come through.
Yeah.
and
that was amazing. But that was, so of course technology has changed, but we still just, C:, you used to save everything in a server. Now you save it in Teams or in SharePoint or whatever, but you do the same structure. You have your folders and you have your documents in your folders. Yeah. Instead of using the amazing new technology where you don't even have to put things in folders.
Because the search functions are so amazing. Yeah.
I don't know if you still put all your email in folders.
I do, but I'm kind of a neat freak, It's like if you saw my home office, you'd realize, this guy's a little bit OCD. He's a bit special.
Okay, so you like it square.
Everything's very special.
I don't do that anymore.
But one of the things that you just hit upon, and I'd love you to comment on this, is that I believe that work-life balance is a conversation that is past. It's about work-life integration.
Yeah.
We've really moved past work-life balance that, I only work enough that I don't have a nervous breakdown and I don't get divorced. That's where we tried to get to in work-life balance, but now we've gone way, way past that. It's about work-life integration. Because if you think even when you're at work, how much time, when you're at work, you're also on social media. and interacting with your friends and taking messages from your teenage kids. And
you use social media at work as well, in your work.
Yeah.
So it's not, you can't really distinguish a person nowadays from his work alias and his personal alias.
Yeah.
I mean, it is growing together more and
Yeah.
more. And of course, we need to embrace that. And that's why we need to have the balance and the harmony between it, because you're going to live that 24/7.
Yeah.
And we can't change the number of hours of a day.
yeah.
So you better do the best of it.
Yeah. Stan, I'd love your comment on that, but just before you do, I'd love to invite the audience to jump online. We've got great panelists here. Ask them some questions. You've got more interesting questions than me, I have no doubt about it. But Stan, what do you think about the whole idea of, work-life balance moving to work-life integration?
Yeah, so I think from our part, it's really where the conversation started. We Henrik and I, when we started the company, we came from another company where I was a partner and I had co-founded, and the culture there was really bad in the sense that you would work if you were left work at 8:00 in the evening, people would ask if you were coming back, and they would expect to be at 8:00 in the morning. And so when we started IIH, we actually shook hands saying we want to be able to go home at 5, say thank you for a good day, and then not have to worry about anything. But part of the founder team, of course, that's not how you work. And for me, I think the work-life integration is really a beautiful image to put on it, because for a lot of us nerds, so I would be punished if I was not. I would be punished if I was not allowed to do work when I was not at work, because this is my passion, right? So if my wife said to me, "So you're only allowed to take literature with you on vacation, but nothing from work and not your computer," it would be my worst vacation ever, because I get sparked and I get the ideas from the stuff I'm doing. That is a huge part of my energy. And yes, I do other stuff as well, but I think this is so damn delightful that I can just say this is about the integration.
Susanne?
And also the other way around. I was just going to say, but I know if I was not able to work without my computer and reading books for job sometimes, I would not do a good job either, because for me it's really important to take the time to really think and to be creative and see other things. And if you ask around the people where they get their best ideas, it is sitting at a desk at work or somewhere else. Do you know the answer?
It's not at work.
It's not at work, but it's actually in the shower.
In the shower.
Which is really interesting. But it could be walking in the woods or whatever. So, and that's different from 87, because then you could, of course, not work from anywhere else. And today I can be outside in the terrace, in the sun, really thinking through things and doing stuff that is still work, and nobody's checking my hours to see, no, she was not online, so she wasn't working. And that's different.
I also think one of the things that we try to inspire people to think differently. So one of the things I do myself is actually, I would normally, so my commute to work is I can actually walk. It takes me half an hour. But what I do very often when I work, then I listen to books on Blinkist. But I have a rule that every other book has to be something out of my subject area. So I have to listen to books that are not something I would narrowly focus. So I'm not trying to go even deeper into the tea. I'm just trying to expand my horizon. And very often, some of the amazing sessions and ideas I have actually comes from being so far outside my subject matter that is just surprising. Saying, "Oh, I could use that. That was really interesting."
I actually have
bringing something home.
Yeah, I actually have exactly the same philosophy, and I listen to a very broad range of topics when I'm listening to podcasts. And I recently did a whole series of webinars on the art of leading people through a challenging time. And the acorn of the idea for that came from listening to a drug and alcohol therapist. So you never know where the inspiration's coming from and our ability to mix and match. But of course, I just want to make a bold statement here right now, is that I find the idea of working at scale appealing on many, many levels. I think it's really great. I think there's great societal benefits. I think there's great personal and psychological benefits. But how will a company maintain its culture? And just before you answer that, there was a pharmaceutical company, I won't mention their name, but about 3 months before the pandemic, they made a big public announcement that they will not let people work from home. They will not embrace that change because they believe their company culture required their people to be in place. I'm sure they're rethinking that policy right now.
Probably.
But how do we maintain that company culture if we have a lot of people and a widely distributed workforce? Suzanne, would you please answer the...
Yeah, and it is, it's the $50 question. It's a really hard question. How do you get people engaged in their job? How do you get people feel the passion for what they're doing and embrace the culture in the company? It is really hard. And I do think that I think also that there has to be a mix. Sometimes you meet and sometimes you don't. But I believe that the flexible work style or lifestyle is still the key to that. That means that you will still have get-togethers in your team or with the company. You will listen to your leadership team maybe presenting every 2 weeks something that is on video and has a communication. So, there are a lot of technological, of course, ways of making sure that you're able to be close. Me and my team, we used to have every 2 weeks, we do have the team meeting, the half-an-hour meeting where we tell everybody what everybody needs to know. And then we do that now as well. I'm used to having people all around of Sweden, so not everybody is in the same office anyway.
Yeah.
So we normally end those on Friday afternoons with having a glass of wine or something, and after work, on video. And it works well to do that even though everybody is at home right now. And that also drives culture because that is part of doing things. I do believe strongly that if you have a company or an entity or whatever you work with in the team, you really need to think through what's the vision, what do you want to accomplish, and make that come into the culture because that's the way you want things to happen. And I do think you need to have that discussion with everyone in the team. It doesn't have to be manager to team. It could be between the team members, but not only measuring results, but also how people do think. And that's part of the culture. But I don't have the answer, of course, but
Stan,
it's...
what are your thoughts?
So one of the things that we've been doing...
You've done it on a small scale, but how could we scale that, to companies that have 100,000?
So I actually think that in one of the things that we see is actually working now. We have people in multiple locations. So what we try to do, and one of the things that we gone back on, because in the beginning we had a lot of really big papers on who we were and our values and stuff, and that's still true. But what we've done is we kind of try to simplify values. Right, so going in and instead of having 17 values, there's 3 core values. And once in a while, what we do is we actually do exercises internally and saying, what activities expresses these value? How do you act? So if the value is helpfulness, what is a helpful action? So trying to actually move the value into something in an everyday situation, and then actually by having people doing this as part of their teams or as part of everything and writing it down and collaborating on it, you actually get a much better anchoring of the value because you have actually thought it into the situation.
Yeah, I totally agree. I often
going that way.
I often work with Hammer and Hanbor's clients on values, and I'm working on integrating personal and company values together. And one of the big processes is, turning values into verbs. Actually getting people to take the company values and write down what does that look like in your everyday work. And that is a really simple, practical way to build that bridge. And if you change that now, that same question, how do you demonstrate that value, whatever the company values are, in the way you do remote work? That's a great way to keep that culture strong.
It's a really interesting exercise that I think we should all do to make sure that we're still aligned, that the values are not sliding. Because it's so easy when we're not together, back to the team sense, to lose the sense of team because we no longer share the value, we just share the job.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that people also need to realize around team sense is that people will do much more for other people than they will do for themselves. It's just a built-in human, piece of software. And one of the things that's so important about having that team sense is that people will disengage, and you mentioned that, Stan, that disengagement can happen, is that's when you see productivity going down, is when people feel like they're only doing it for themselves. Well, people in general only do the minimum for themselves, but they will do much more and go the extra mile for a team. So that connection's really important. Stan, one of the questions that came in was, what's the name of your book and where can people find it?
Oh, they can. I can share a link with Anastasia. Otherwise, it's called The Secret of the 4-Day Week.
Okay. And is there somewhere right now people can jump online and grab it if there's a?
They can. I think they can get it on Amazon. I think a lot of online bookstores will have it. So, but otherwise, actually, and of course I should have prepared that. But we actually have a link to a site where we sell it and ship it ourselves. So see how little commercial I am here. Right? Hopelessly unprepared.
Great.
So I think it's called Go 4-Day Week or something.
Okay, great. Great. Well, we'll do our very best to share a link with everyone who's online with us today. So
awesome.
I wanted to Susanne, also just ask you worked with Microsoft on this project, Det nye arbeidslivet, the new way of working.
Yeah.
And I'd like some congratulations for pronouncing that. But I'd like you to could you just give us a little bit of background about how that project rolled out and the kind of insights that came out of that? Because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and Microsoft have done these projects twice now because they moved again after that. But the first time was really early on because and it was driven from just we have too much space and we understand that we have a lot of empty desks. So, but what was really the learning afterwards is that you really need to engage the people.
Yeah.
You can't only engage the leadership. It is important that the leadership believes in the project and that they are transmitting the feeling of this is great. Yeah. But then you need to have the people engaged from everything from color on the carpets to the kind of shares that they're going to use.
So you bring up a really good point there because a lot of leadership teams are now back in their offices planning on how all of their people can now work remotely or have more options to that, and they're not involving their people.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's the key of change management. You need to make people desire to do a change. It's the ADKAR model that everybody probably already read about. It's nothing new there either. But if you don't get the feeling of the people that they want to change and they understand why they have to change, then they will resist it.
Yeah. Sten, your thoughts?
Yeah, but it really the same thing. I see people have to be involved in the process. It's one of the things that we did from the beginning. So getting the basics right was part of our process. So actually people observing their own way of working and actually telling where it was broken. So which is something where you kind of have to, it's not something you can get a management to come in from the outside telling people they can observe to a certain degree, but if people are not involved, if people don't share that they have this frustration, then it won't be fixed.
Yeah.
Right? And getting that involvement, it just takes so I noted before we were talking about, well, our terms are people, processes, and technology, or tools. But everything breaks if the people are not in it. Technology and processes cannot do anything on their own.
So you talk about, what were the three things you said? People, process, technology?
People, process,
and you talk about people, place, and technology.
Yeah. But without people, there isn't anything.
Yep.
People are the core of this.
Yep.
So it's not. So basically, normally we would do a Venn diagram and we would have three circles that were overlapping. But the problem is that people are basically everywhere.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Look, let's have some closing comments. Susanne, I think that, you've given us some great insights, but given this lockdown, given this massive evolution that we've been forced into with remote working, do you have any closing comments about what you see about the future of remote work?
Well, I would say that the remote work will continue, but not as far as the pendulum goes, as Henrik and you said before. And I still think that it's about having a work life that suits people.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look the same for everyone. And all the employees do not have the same urges or the same wishes or the same needs.
Yeah.
So you have to take that into consideration and create something that's flexible. And what else? I do think that coming back to the basics of what we were discussing from start, the AI influence on the daily work life, I do think working a lot more with artificial intelligence to make sure that you get the right information for you and that you share the information in a right way will be very, very key. And one of the tasks that people in all organizations wastes, I would say, most time on is searching.
Really?
So looking for information, because there is the information overflow we were talking about. So if we could use the AI functions to find the information easier, to look through everything, the recordings from the team meetings, as well as the documents, as well as the PowerPoint slides, as well as whatever mail conversations. If you could do searches through all these different kind of media, it would help a lot, and it would save so much time that we could easily have the fifth day off, all of us.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So,
Sten?
So I think actually from our part of this, we're in a public space. So for us, it's also now about saying, one thing is going for 4 days, but could we do the same in 3? So what are the challenges to actually work even smarter? And I think remote work is a big part of the future for us. I just saw, I think Facebook says that they're opening up to people being free to do remote work. When they feel like it, they will increase the recruitment area. So you just have to live within 4 hours of one of their hubs, so you can come into work once in a while.
Okay.
And I see that as a good part of the future, that we will increase our flexibility and we will live further from work.
Yep.
We will recruit further from work, but it will not be like it is now. We will go closer to something that was before, like I said, but not the full way. So now it's looking towards the middle ground and not towards another extreme.
Yep.
But just accepting that things will certainly not go back to what they were.
Great. Look, I appreciate you both so much. Susanne, Sten, you've made a huge contribution to today's summit, and I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being with us.
It's been fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Sten.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sten.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Susan.